Wow, this is very exciting to return to St. Thomas. I'm an alum, and it's awesome to see everybody here. One of my earliest memories cooking in the kitchen was making scrambled eggs. I was 5. I loved to eat. I loved being in the kitchen. It was the epicenter of our home. And I realized looking back that it was not so much the idea of being in control of what I was eating, but participating in that mealtime, gathering with my family, of having a meal together with them. Our family's food and culture and diet, and by diet I mean the way that we eat, not necessarily what we eat, but the culture around our food habits, was informed in large part by my mother's childhood. Her grandparents were dairy and rice farmers from Evangeline Parish, Louisiana. So everything was very from the earth. It was from scratch. It was simple. It was delicious. As a child growing up, we had sugar snap peas and green beans that we snapped ourselves. It wasn't frozen. There were no shortcuts. And I'm grateful for this part of my story, as I'm currently the culinary director of a girls' summer camp in the Texas Hill Country, Camp Waldemar. We serve approximately 500 3 meals a day during our summer sessions. And these are not your typical heat and serve meals. We're doing everything from scratch. We encourage table manners and kind of mindful, gracious behavior, as if the girls are guests in our home. And with that in mind, we as the hosts take into consideration the girls' well-being and care. And I've had some 13 and 14-year-old campers who have approached me and told me that they can tell how much I care about them because the food makes them feel so good. And if that's not success, I don't know what is. Our culinary program is based on the vision of Ora Johnson, who is the founder of the camp. And it was executed by Lucille Bishop Smith, who is, in her own right, an innovation of talent from the early 20s on. She ran the camp kitchen for over 45 years. And these are big shoes to fill. Everything was prepared from scratch. Everything was prepared with love. And everything was prepared to nourish these girls so that they were able to make it through their day, not only the activities and to be strong, but also to have a platform for sitting at the table. We serve family style, and so that means that each table has 10 campers, 1 counselor, and they sit together, they commune together, they talk about their day, they share their meal, they become companions. And companionship in the modern vernacular refers to someone who is someone you enjoy spending time with or you share experiences with. But when you break the word down from the Latin prefix com, meaning together with, and panis, bread, together with bread, breaking bread together. We think of this in a religious context as a sacred rite. Really, food and mealtime is maybe one of the most pivotal, primal moments of our day. We're able to break down social barriers. We're able to become exposed and more vulnerable when we sit at a table and share our intimacies together. We oftentimes give ourselves permission to take shortcuts, but when you sit down at a table and you look at one another and you have that eye-to-eye conversation and you are companions, you're breaking your bread together, you're exposing yourself from those social barriers, you're shedding all of those things that keeps us separate, and it says, you mean something to me. I'm willing to share my bounty of my harvest with you because your survival is as vital as mine. Together, we are stronger than we are alone. You know, our early ancestors, early on, hunted and gathered, meaning that they kind of followed the migratory paths of the animals and they picked up the nuts and the roots and the things along the way, spent a lot of time chewing. And, you know, hunting, the success of hunting was not always something that they could count on. So when they did have that animal kill and they were able to get the meat, if you think about it, raw meat is tough to chew, and you spend a lot of time chewing, but the meat itself is not going to last very long. So oftentimes you just kind of keep yourself moving. Once humankind was able to control fire and use fire as a cooking fuel, things started to change. Significant changes happened. You're able to, food is easier to digest. It's not as tough to chew. So you're spending less time chewing, but you're also gleaning more nourishment from the food. Different nutrients are released. So really, it's at that moment, when we talk about gathering around the campfire, we're talking about one of the earliest forms of technology that simplified lifestyle. We were able to gather together. We were able to spend time sharing our day, communing together while food was being prepared, and eating together. We still gather around the campfire at camp. We normally roast marshmallows. We tell stories. We share a treat together. But it's that communion, that coming together, that companionship that strengthens everyone's experience. And it ends up being something that, whether you're 10 years old or 80 years old or any age in between, to gather around the campfire has significant meaning. Now, we think about how we move from our day-to-day lives, and we all eat, we all spend time together, whether we're on the phone or we're in class together. But if we spend time at our table together and give ourselves that chance to have communion and companionship, intimacies form. About 20 years ago, I was going through a major upheaval in my life. My marriage was falling apart, and we were separated but still living together, which I can tell you is a very sticky, stressful scenario. We were just having a hard time finding that common ground to have the conversations that we needed to have to resolve our issues. We had a small child between us. He's grown now, but he was very young at the time, and that should have been enough motivation for us to find that voice, find that common ground. But we just weren't making the right choices. And it was Easter Sunday, and I decided I'd make his favorite Easter meal, which was roast leg of lamb with rosemary and garlic and roasted new potatoes and spring vegetables. And he was so touched by the gesture and the effort. And when we sat down to share that meal together, something broke open, and we were able to have a conversation that was based on compassion. We found our common voice. And although our marriage wasn't able to survive, we as friends and as a family did. It has definitely informed the way that I've raised my child and the way that I accept and show gratitude for everyone that I come in contact with. I have a favorite quote. It's a foodie quote. "Tell me what you eat, and I will tell you who you are." Now, it was penned by an 18th century French gastronome. His name was Jean-Anselme Brillat-Savarin. Yes, it's a mouthful for non-French speakers. And it's also the inspiration for the cheese, Brillat-Savarin. He was also a French politician. If you haven't seen his book, The Physiology of Taste, it's well worth the time to read it, because for 200 years of thought, he really struck home in some of his ideas. It's the idea of bringing culture and food together, that our customs, that what we eat, what we choose to eat, tells people who we are. It gives us insight into where you come from and what means something to you and how you choose to spend your life. And we think about the customs in our home, and we learn to cook. We learn to cook from our mothers, our grandmothers, our fathers, our grandfathers. The customs are passed along, and that time spent is rich in building our heritages. I was, as I mentioned, my family's culinary background is informed by Louisiana, so the Cajun Trinity was a big part of our home. That's, for those of you that don't know Cajun food, that's the onion and celery and bell pepper with a little garlic thrown in for good measure. And we made gumbo a lot. Now, gumbo is based on a roux that's stirred for a long time to get that nice, deep, rich flavor. And I remember being at the stove with my grandmother, and she was talking about learning to make gumbo from her uncle back in the 20s. And he had very specific rules for how to do this correctly. Any family will tell you they have their specific rules. And one of those was to season the soup with cayenne pepper. Red pepper has higher health benefits than black pepper, which is difficult to digest. And it's interesting because that's informed my culinary style since. I've always used red pepper or cayenne over black pepper. And I think about how that has transformed my cooking, that one moment, that one point in time with my grandmother. I spent a beautiful 6 weeks in Ethiopia about 10 years ago on a culinary exchange. And if it's not on your bucket list of places to go, it should be. It is one of the most mesmerizing, enchanting, phenomenal cultures, rich in heritage, rich in beauty and brilliance, and they have one of the most unusual culinary styles. It's centered around injera, which is a fermented sponge-like pancake, and it kind of lays on the table. So all the food is set on top of it. It's made from teff, which is an indigenous ancient grain, and they soak it and ferment it, and then they use it, they tear it off, and they use it as their utensil to eat their food. They also have a fasting period where they don't eat any meat products on Wednesdays and Fridays. So if you're visiting Ethiopia, expect vegan meals on Wednesdays and Fridays. And the fasting is a moment for them to reflect internally, to show gratitude, to have a spiritual meditation, and to just take a step back. It's kind of like an ancient version of our modern Meatless Monday, where we're seeking that balance and gratitude from the earth. So regardless of where your heritage is, no matter how you grew up, you have a story to tell. When you sit down at a table and you've prepared a meal for someone you care about, there's information to share. And I think it's that time of taking to sit down, to prepare a meal, to enjoy it with people you care about, that changes your relationship and changes the context and fabric of your lives. I think as we move through the busy modern era where we've got every food available to us from all over the world. I can go to the market and buy kaffir lime leaves from Thailand and berbere spice from Ethiopia. I can buy Italian imported pastas, and I can buy things from all over the world. And it's wonderful, you know. I mean, it's so exciting to be able to experience these things. But it's that moment in time that we take to prepare them. We don't take the shortcuts. We prepare things that mean something to us, and we share them with people that mean something to us. And so as I stand here in front of you, I wonder, what would it be like to sit down at your table? What would you tell me if you invited me to your table? What kind of story do you want to tell your friends? What kind of story do you want to share with the people you've just met? What would happen if the most significant moment in your lives is yet to come as you prepare a meal for your friends and you open up that conversation? You start a new conversation. You increase the ability to share who you are and what you want to do with the rest of your lives through your table. I wonder if that's something that we could all stop and slow down and take time to do, to invite a friend over, to have them come to your table, to be storytellers, to tell your story and let them tell yours, to gather around the campfire, so to speak, and to become intimate companions. Mealtime is a time to celebrate our lives. It's a time to gather, to be intimate partners in what we have to experience. It's a social contract. It's a table for our rites of passage. It's an opportunity to share with one another. And I have to say that I still gather at the table with my ex-husband and his family. We are companions. We are able to share the intimacies of our lives. We are able to be partners in celebrating all of the beauty that we have together. It was that moment in time that gave us that conversation, and we've never left that. We've been able to enjoy one another and be enriched by that. And so I hope that you will take this with you. Prepare whole foods. Take that moment to share it with people that you care about. Be companions. Thank you.